I'm honored to be with the families that a number of people who have committed themselves to making this state and this country safer. Families that lost loved ones to drunk drivers. We're here with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the National Transportation Safety Board, and all the others joining us to advocate for safer roads in California. Once every 2 minutes, a person is injured in a drunk driving crash in the United States. Once every hour, someone dies from a drunk driver. In California, each year, over 1,000 people die from drunk drivers, and more than 20,000 are injured. SB 545 and AB 1713 take swift action to protect Californians from drunk drivers. SB 545 will require first-time DUI offenders to install an ignition interlock device, an IID, and AB 1713 would lower the legal blood alcohol concentration limit from 0.08% to 0.05%. Over half of DUI offenders drive illegally after their arrest or do not complete treatment programs. And repeat DUI offenders keep offending. They account for about 1/3 of annual DUI convictions. In 2016, a report released by MAD found that IIDs in California had prevented over 1 million instances of drinking and driving since 2010. That's 1 million preventions of someone getting behind the wheel. Someone getting behind the wheel with alcohol in their system and in their blood. 33 states have already enacted laws mandating IIDs for first-time offenders and have seen significant decreases in drunk driving deaths. Let me give you a few examples. Since New Mexico's Interlock law was implemented, drunk driving fatalities are down by 38%. In Arizona and Louisiana, drunk driving deaths have decreased by 43% and 35% respectively as a result of that law. In Oregon, DUI deaths are down by 42%. 20 years of international studies have shown that when a country lowers blood alcohol concentration limits from 0.08 to 0.05, alcohol-related fatal and injury crashes decrease significantly. 0.05 blood alcohol content laws could save 1,790 lives a year and reduce alcohol-related deaths by 11% in the United States. That's 1,790 families that don't have to suffer what the families behind me have had to go through and the pain that they've felt. The bottom line, we are pushing for these policies because we know they will save countless lives in California. Now, I urge my colleagues in the Senate, both the Senate and the Assembly, to pass both SB 545 and AB 1713. Now, our first speaker today is Mary Klotzbach. The Matthew Klotzbach Mandatory Ignition Interlock for DUI Offender Act of 2019. That's what SB 545 is called. The Matthew Klotzbach Mandatory Ignition Interlock for DUI Offender Act of 2019. It's named for her son. Mary has been a tireless advocate for MAD and ignition interlocks for many years. And hopefully this is the year where those first-time offenders will be able to continue to drive, but do it safely. Mary?
My name is Mary Klotzbach. I'm a Livermore resident and a nurse for 29 plus years at a Bay Area trauma center, and a former National Board of Director of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I'm here today in support of the Matthew Klotzbach Mandatory Ignition Interlock for DUI Offenders Act of 2019. Thank you, Senator Hill, for authoring life-saving Senate Bill 545, requiring ignition interlocks for all first-time convicted DUI offenders. This legislation is very personal. Matthew Klotzbach is my son. He is gone because a convicted drunk driver made the choice to drive and drink, this time on a suspended license, which was meant to keep him off the road. An ignition interlock law like the one authored by Senator Hill, could have saved my son's life. Every drunk driving death is preventable. This fact compounds the grief of my family, and I will live with this for the rest of my life. Matt's death was 100% preventable. Matthew was 22 years old. He was our firstborn, a midshipman at the United States Naval Academy. We were so proud to see him pursuing his lifelong dream of becoming a pilot. He consistently made the dean's list and was on track to become the first sergeant of his company during his second-class year. Matt was engaged for 1 week. He was killed before realizing his dream. You don't forget the night that changes your life forever. I remember very clearly July 29th, 2001. Matt was home with us on his summer break. A drunk driver ran a stop sign, slamming into my car with my husband and Matt inside. The impact forced our car over a 3-foot center divide and into oncoming traffic where we were hit by a pickup truck. Trapped in the car and injured myself, I tried to get my son to start CPR, but I could not. As a nurse who has worked in a trauma center for over 30 years, I have never felt so helpless. When I heard the EMT say, "This one has no pulse," I knew that they were talking about Matt, and there was nothing I could do. As a mother, I will live with that pain forever. I share my story not for pity, but to motivate lawmakers to make this stop. They have the power within them to do that. Matt, who was prepared to risk his life for his country anywhere in the world, died right here in California on our roadways. He did not have to die that day. Technology exists to do what drunk drivers won't do, to lock them out. Right now in California, interlocks are required for all repeat offenders. Currently, 33 states, Washington, D.C., have laws similar to SB 545, which would require ignition interlocks for every DUI offender, including the first conviction. Ignition interlocks save lives. Over the last 12 years, these devices have prevented nearly 250,000 stops to drive drunk with a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08 or greater here in California. In 2018, nearly 25,000 attempts. Can you imagine how many more attempts to drive drunk an all-offender interlock bill will stop? Tragically, I can. Ignition interlocks stop the revolving door of repeat DUI offenders. Since MAD's founding nearly 4 decades ago, drunk driving across the nation is down by half. But the fight to end this violent, vicious crime is far from over. In fact, since 2014, the numbers have been increasing. In 2017, alcohol-related traffic fatalities killed 1,316 people in the state of California alone. The current ignition interlock is outdated. It does not include the many best practices adopted by other states. If lawmakers don't take action, California will no longer be recognized as a leader in the fight against the scourge of drunk driving. The good news is that we can do something about it. Research tells us that states that enacted laws like SB 545 saw drunk driving deaths fall by up to 16%. This bill could save at least 210 lives in the state of California alone. Thank you again, Senator Hill. I call on all lawmakers to advance this life-saving legislation to allow one more son, daughter, parent, spouse to come home safely. We have no other options. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And now I'd like to introduce Marcus Koval and Michelle Adair. They are the parents of 15-month-old Liam, who was killed by a hit-and-run drunk driver in 2016. Assemblymember Burke named her AB 1713 Liam's Law in his honor. Marcus and Michelle, thank you for joining us today.
I want to start off by thanking Assemblymember Burke for introducing the bill, as well as Assemblymember Flora and Senator Hill, who co-sponsored the bill. Our son was one of 10,497 lives lost in 2016 in the United States. That's the equivalent of a jumbo jet crashing every single week. America is currently the leading developed country in the world when it comes to deaths due to drunk driving. Drunk driving isn't just the deadliest, but it's also the costliest thing that we see on American roads today. And it could so easily end. The opposition say that a law shouldn't be implemented based on emotions, and they're 100% right. But there's very few bills that can be backed by so much science and statistics and facts as when it comes to lowering the BAC, which has been done in almost 100 countries already. Statistics don't lie, science doesn't lie. These are facts. It's frustrating at times to continue to fight for something that's so clear and could easily make such a huge difference in this country. But at the same time, that frustration is also fuel to continue going and making sure that AB 1713, Liam's Law, isn't just something that will be implemented in California, but all across the United States. I also want to thank MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and all the other organizations that are backing the BAC of 0.05, and with Ignition Interlocks combined with the lowered BAC, to make a difference when it comes to drunk driving, you have to spin off all plates. And that's how we'll make that change. Thank you.
My name is Michelle, and I am Liam's mom. Liam was my world, and I only got to spend 15 months with him before a drunk driver took him from me. Our family has a permanent scar and void that will never be filled. But Liam has put us on a trajectory to save other families from this heartache. What feels so unjust is the fact that Liam's death was completely preventable. His story is tragic, but not unique. As Marcus said, over 10,000 people died in 2016 because of impaired drivers. We need to start changing the narrative between how many drinks it takes to get to 0.08 to impairment. Impairment starts with the first drink. And the more you drink, the less likely you are going to make good decisions. Liam never had the opportunity to make choices. He never even learned to run. He had just started walking. And the driver had a decision. She had a choice. So we want to make people have the opportunity to make better choices from the start. Lowering the BAC will allow that to happen. Every single time that the BAC has been lowered, people have made better choices and the fatalities have dropped significantly. Liam's Life Foundation supports SB 545 as well as AB 1713, Liam's Law, because together that is how we're going to make a change. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much, Marcus and Michelle. I'd now like to introduce Leah Walton, safety advocate for the National Transportation Safety Board, who is here from Washington, D.C., to share her thoughts with us.
Good morning. My name is Leah Walton. I'm a safety advocate for the National Transportation Safety Board. I'm here on behalf of the NTSB to support Liam's Law and Matt's Law in California, a state that is so often an early adopter of life-saving measures. And so often, when California leads, other states follow. I would like to thank Mothers Against Drunk Driving for inviting the NTSB to participate today. MAD led the charge to reduce the BAC limit from 0.1 to 0.08 back in the 1980s, and so it is natural for MAD to join the fight to lower the BAC to 0.05 now. And MAD's campaign to eliminate drunk driving included all offender ignition interlocks from the start. I'm sharing the stage today with courageous families, On behalf of the NTSB, I would like to extend our deepest condolences to the Koval family and the Klotzbach family, as well as the Leister family, and any other families who have experienced the devastating loss of an impaired driving crash. Finally, I want to acknowledge Senator Hill, who has introduced legislation for an all-offender ignition interlock bill, as well as Assemblyperson Burke, who has introduced Liam's Law to change California's per se BAC limit from 0.08 to 0.05. Both of these life-saving measures are in line with the NTSB's safety recommendations outlined in our 2013 Reaching Zero report. Utah enacted a 0.05 BAC limit late last year. Now it is California's time. In California, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, 1,120 people died in impaired driving crashes in 2017, the last full year on record. If you include crashes with any amount of alcohol involvement, that number increases to 1,316 deaths. Liam's Law would reduce both numbers because a 0.05 BAC limit would be a broad deterrent, saving lives not only between the 0.05 and 0.08 BAC limit, but at all BAC limits. Impairment begins with the first drink, and significant additional crash risk increases or begins at 0.05 BAC. Maybe that is why 63% of Americans are in favor of lowering the BAC to 0.05, and why in most of the world, the legal limit is already 0.05 or lower, including countries with higher alcohol consumption. It's not that they don't drink, they just don't drink and drive. It is time that we Americans accept that we can drink responsibly, we can drive responsibly, but we cannot drink and drive responsibly. 0.05 is a broad deterrent and preventing impaired driving crashes, but we know that some people will continue to drive impaired. NTSB made the safety recommendation for all offender ignition interlocks because it would provide a swift and certain punishment for convicted impaired drivers. Eliminating impaired driving will take a comprehensive approach, and these two life-saving measures will help us reach zero alcohol-impaired driving crashes. The NTSB has studied these issues. Our conclusion, and the conclusion of other organizations like MAD, the National Safety Council, Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety, and the National Academy of Sciences, is that all offender ignition interlocks and 0.05 saves lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah. Our next speaker is Carol Leister, a member of MAD's National Board, also is here with us this morning. Her volunteer work with MAD honors her son, who was killed by a drunk driver in 2008. Carol?
My name's Carol Leister, and I'm a California resident and a National Board member of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I'm here today on behalf of MAD to announce our support for two initiatives: ignition interlocks for all offenders and lowering California's BAC threshold to 0.05. Today I want to focus on Assembly Bill 1713, Liam's Law, which, if passed, would make California the second state in the nation to lower its legal limit for driving to 0.05. MAD thanks Assemblyperson Burke for authoring this measure. To Senator Hill, you continue to lead the fight against drunk driving in the Senate. MAD thanks you for co-authoring Liam's Law. To Marcus and Michelle, thank you. Your tireless advocacy will lead to a lasting legacy of Liam and help create a future of no more victims. To Mary and Tom Klotzbach, thank you. For over 12 years, you have fought to pass an all-offender interlock in honor of Matt and to stop drunk driving. When you first started advocating for an all-offender interlock law, only a handful of states had such a law. Now 34 states have these life-saving laws in place. Matt's law is long overdue. MAD fought for years to pass a nationwide 0.08 BAC law that has saved more than 40,000 lives and will continue to save lives. Yet drunk driving and drunk driving deaths are ticking up from fewer than 10,000 in 2014 to nearly 11,000 in 2017. What we're doing is not enough. That's why MAD made the decision this year to support any state that seeks to lower the BAC threshold to .05. .05 is impairment. It's a level adopted by more than 100 countries, and it's a level the majority of Americans already support, the AAA tells us. To be clear, .08 is not typically 1 or 2 drinks after work. According to the CDC, a 160-pound male would have to drink 3 drinks in an hour to reach a .05. MAD is not against people aged 21 and over consuming alcohol. Liam's Law does not stop the sale of alcohol. A cornerstone of MAD since our founding in 1980 is to prevent drinking and driving, which Liam's Law will help accomplish. .05 has a broad deterrent effect, meaning people will be less likely to drink and drive. .05 will save lives, 1,790 each year if all states adopted this threshold. 1,790 families spared the lifelong pain of sudden, violent, preventable loss. I discovered that pain on the early morning of August 17th, 2008, when I was notified by police that Scott, my youngest son, would not be coming home. A drunk driver going more than 100 miles per hour rear-ended my son's car while he was on the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. Scott was just 21 years old. We must do more. On behalf of MAD, I urge lawmakers to advance these life-saving proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Our next speaker is Alan Epstein. He's the Director of Transportation Safety for the National Safety Council, also from Washington, D.C.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Alex Epstein. I'm with the National Safety Council, and it's a pleasure to be here with the courageous legislators and the affected families. And National Safety Council is announcing our support of these legislative efforts. Not sure what. We're honored to be here with you today to raise awareness about the crisis that we're facing on the roads. Every day in this country, we lose 100 people to car crashes. 100 people every day. At the National Safety Council, we work to eliminate preventable deaths at work, at home, and on the road, and we've been doing it for more than 100 years. When it comes to road safety, impairment remains a leading cause of crashes and fatalities. Facing the impact impaired driving has had on the families gathered here, and thousands more like them, has done more than we know to bring this issue to the forefront. But what we know is that the national culture has to change. We no longer can accept the status quo around drunk driving. I want to applaud the NTSB for first raising the flag in 2013 by calling for states to lower the legal BAC. It was controversial and it was provocative, but it was scientifically sound. Impaired driving has been one of the toughest obstacles to overcome in eliminating roadway fatalities. As you've heard today, we firmly believe that impairment doesn't begin at .08 or .05. Impairment begins at the first drink. Our countermeasures must reflect this fact. We're really excited to have MAD join this fight as well. Their support ensures that the families here and thousands like them and so many others around this country will no longer suffer the same heartbreak and will not be forgotten. With NTSB, Advocates for Highway Safety, MAD, and the National Safety Council all working together, I know that we can make the roads safer here in California and beyond. Make no mistake about it, impaired driving is a real problem here in California. Over 120,000 arrests were made for DUI in 2017 alone. 1,000 lives, as you've heard, are lost every year. 37% of all road fatalities in the state involve an impaired driver, 1 out of 3. It's higher than the national average. And we need to remember these are not statistics. These are not just numbers. You've heard the proof of that. There are people, family members, children, fathers, mothers, and we know that the victims suffer long after the crash. Clearly, we have to try new things to get better results. This state, the great state of California, has long been a leader in road safety, and it is once again shows that it has the opportunity to lead on impaired driving by requiring even first-time offenders to use ignition interlocks and lowering the legal threshold to 0.05%. There's no magic bullet, but what we need is a sound approach to law enforcement, education, and to enact common sense laws. As you've heard from our friends at MAD, ignition interlocks have been very successful in checking repeat offenders, and it makes all the sense in the world to use all the tools in our toolbox. By lowering the legal threshold in line with best practices followed the world over, we will make a difference and save lives. I'm encouraged by everyone joining us today, organizations that are close partners in the Road to Zero Coalition, as we all work together to eliminate roadway fatalities. Thank you all. Let's do what we can to keep each other safe.
Thank you, Alex. I'd now like to introduce Peter Kurdak, is the General Counsel for Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Also, he's joining us from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Peter Kurdak. As Senator Hill mentioned, I'm the General Counsel for Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. We are a nonprofit organization comprised of the leading consumer, public health, and safety groups and insurers. Our mission is simple. We work in every state in Washington, D.C. to advance safer drivers, passengers, and road users, safer vehicles, and safer roads. Today, Advocates is pleased to join Senator Hill and Assemblymember Burke, MAD, NTSB, NSC, and others to support swift enactment of Senate Bill 545, which, as you heard, will require all drunk drivers to use an ignition interlock device, also known as an IAD, as well as Assembly Bill 1713 that would lower the blood alcohol content while driving from 0.08 to 0.05%. We commend Senator Hill and Assemblymember Burke for their leadership to ensure the health and safety of California motorists by sponsoring these common sense measures to curb alcohol-impaired driving. Drunk driving is a deadly and costly threat to California families, and it requires immediate attention and action. As you've heard, in 2017, there were over 3,000 fatalities on the state's roads, and over a third of those deaths were alcohol-related. Over a third. Over the 10-year period from 2006 to 2015, over 9,000 people were killed on California roads in crashes involving a drunk driver. They are Matthew, they are Liam, and they are Scott. Traffic crashes also cost California taxpayers dearly, nearly $20 billion, that's with a B, $20 billion annually. Moreover, drunk driving is also hurting business. Nationally, these crashes cost employers $6 billion, with a B, dollars each year. The data behind all offender ID requirements, as you've heard already, is crystal clear. Information from MAD on the effectiveness of IEDs in California notes that since 2010, IEDs have prevented over 1 million attempts to drive drunk on the Golden State's roads. Given these statistics, it is not at all surprising that 33 states and Washington, D.C., including neighboring states of Oregon, Nevada, and Arizona, have already passed all offender IED laws. or that a majority of Americans, as you've heard, support all offender IEDs laws. Under current law in California, ignition interlocks are mandated for all offenders except many first-time offenders. Expanding the law to include all first-time offenders would improve the effectiveness in an IED program, prevent drunk driving, and save countless lives. A recent report from the World Health Organization found that the U.S. has fallen behind other developed nations in reducing our traffic fatality rate. A key difference between the U.S. and these countries, as you heard, is the 0.08% BAC law. Other nations enforce a 0.05 BAC or lower even law. California is one of the first states to go from 0.10 to 0.08. Last year, Utah became one of the first states to go from 0.08 to 0.05. While widely employed around the world, it's time for the U.S. and certainly California to catch up and enact this research-proven countermeasure. We urge the California legislature to enact Senate Bill 545 and Assembly Bill 713 to send a clear message that drunk driving will not be tolerated and to protect, more importantly, California families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Our final speaker is Bruce Lee Livingston, Executive Director and CEO of Alcohol Justice, based in Marin. This nonprofit has been an independent watchdog over the alcohol industry for 32 years. Welcome, Bruce.
On average, over 10,500 persons a year die from alcohol-related deaths in California, and every one of these deaths and hundreds of thousands of injuries is preventable. None more so than those caused by impaired driving traffic collisions. Lowering the blood alcohol content limit to 0.05 is the most important next step in reducing alcohol harm and death. Simply put, 0.05 saves lives. Many peer-reviewed scientific studies predict 5% to 18% reduction in alcohol-related collision fatalities. Studies also show that 0.05 BAC does not reduce overall drinking in the economy, but with good enforcement of 0.05, driving is still mildly impaired, but consumers could still slowly consume 2 and sometimes 3 standard drinks before getting behind the wheel. Alcohol Justice, the alcohol industry watchdog, enthusiastically supports Liam's Law, AB 1713, and applauds the work of Liam's Life Foundation and Mothers Against Drunk Driving. We are also excited to further the Ignition Interlock program through SB 545, which will bring $1.6 million of federal money to reimburse costs to the state of California. Over 40 organizations in the California Alcohol Policy Alliance support Liam's Law and will be working for it this year. Let's follow the lead of Utah, almost every province in Canada, and over 100 countries throughout the world, covering over 2 billion people, and put in place a 0.05 law in California. So say it with me, 0.05 saves lives. 0.05 saves lives. 0.05 saves lives. 0.05 saves lives. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Bruce, very much. Appreciate all of you being here today, and thank you for the courage to stand here and really tell that what has to be such a painful life story. You know, I think about the idea of, as I've looked at what it takes to have 0.08. I'm 160 pounds, and it says I can drink, if I drink 4 drinks in an hour, I'll be at 0.08. I'll be at 0.05 if I drink 3 drinks in an hour. If I drank 4 drinks in an hour, I'd be under this podium. There's no way, I believe, I could drive a car, much less drive it safely. I mean, it is incredible when you think of what the standard is today and what we allow in California. Be happy to answer questions, and I'm sure any of our participants today would be happy to answer any questions you may have. And we also have the car right here that this Ford has an IID inside. If you'd like to take a look and see how it operates, and it's a very simple device and works very well. Questions? Very good. Well, thank you again to everyone for being here today, and thank you all for being here today and participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.